I guess without further ado, we'll get started. We got to talk about the main issue of this week, which is the Hunter Biden scandal. The New York Post first reported the article that Hunter Biden has links with Burisma, a Ukrainian company that he worked for, he was unqualified for. Well, he worked there while Joe Biden was vice president. Man, it's complicated and it's a big deal. So
It's everything that you want from like a political thriller in Hollywood. I mean, both sides are going at it, and I think we first have to just talk about the story. And for me, I think it comes up short on two levels, the actual story. First, I don't see the value of its sourcing and because of its significance. So first, I think um, so there was a report that the intel that American intelligence leaders fear that this came from a hack from Russia, and because of that, to try to avoid any collusion talk, I think the Trump administration just made the dumbest cover story that they could have. It's a bizarre story that a random computer was dropped off at um, at a random computer shop by a man, unidentified man, but still somehow there's receipts from Hunter Biden, but the um, computer tech couldn't identify him. It's really bizarre, and it um, just screams shadiness. And of course, Rudy Giuliani dropped the actual hard drive to the New York Post. And but even with all those things, I think the photos and emails are real. Which, and if they're not, I mean, that's crazy, next level craziness. If they just forged that kind of stuff, so that in that sense, I think the photos and emails are real, but I don't think that they're that significant. Um, I think that uh, this isn't a scandal in the making. Um, so I don't think the email should matter. So this is, but we already know what Biden's done versus this. They claim that this is significant because Biden fired the prosecutor that was investigating Burisma after his son got hired. That's false. The prosecutor was not even investigating Burisma. An international policing community wanted that prosecutor to be fired because he was withholding evidence from an unrelated investigation, and then which made the Ukrainian police system less corrupt, which would actually hurt Burisma. So why, if Joe Biden was using his position to advance his son's career, why would he take those steps that would actually hurt the company? Secondly, I don't know why Trump is one to complain about nepotism. I mean, three of his kids are literally
exactly.
working in the White House. Um, and and lastly, people made such a big deal about Hunter Biden's crack photos, which is another part of this story. Of course, photos were released of him um, smoking crack and having relations with a um, an alleged hooker. I don't think I don't think that relates to Joe in any way, and if anything, it accentuates his most human, one of his strongest
Yeah.
moments from the terrible debate a couple of weeks ago, which is when he looked at the camera and addressed all the Americans struggling with addiction, and he said, "quote My son had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm really proud of him for it." Quote, end quote. I mean, I think if this administration continues to go after Hunter Biden's drug habit, it just shows their lack of morality, if anything.
So let me pose you this question. I guess facts aside from the whole scandal, if you want to call it a scandal, I guess. What do you think its ramifications are on the election are? Obviously, there was a scandal 4 years ago with Hillary Clinton and the emails, but that was much farther away from the election. This is like 2 or 3 weeks away from election day.
And it
What are its
was,
effects?
I mean, it's I don't know, because Hillary's scandal impacted the election. Charts showed that.
Definitely.
But hopefully people can see through this, because this is in my opinion, a lot less of a story than Hillary's was. Um, and I think, um, yeah, I hope it doesn't impact it, because this is an example of terrible reporting, by the New York Post.
And it's I mean
And
the timing is like like they're breaking this news story 2 weeks before the election.
Exactly, especially since the FBI has had the hard drive for a couple months now. It's really bizarre, and I know I kind of sound like a Biden apologist right now, but I don't think this story has any merit to it, personally.
I'd have to
And
agree with you there. I think it's kind of ridiculous personally.
the the other element to it is obviously Twitter, um, and Facebook restricting um, restricting the story from being shared. And look, there's a fine line between combating misinformation and restricting free speech, right? I think we can all agree on that. And I think I have mixed feelings on Facebook and Twitter taking it down, because I like them taking down dishonest content that's harmful to the election, harmful to a candidate, especially a candidate that I support. But on the other hand, it feels like censorship. It really does. And it plays right into that conservative talking point that the media is against them. And although uh, I think I support Twitter backtracking, actually, and I think putting misinformation alerts on those stories when they're shared is a good idea, even though I think Twitter should make them big and bold and really hard to miss, if anything, because it's I don't think I don't think there's a place for that story in America, and hopefully we can help people see right through it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's very like Twitter is very complicated and polarizing in a political sense, especially because in like the last 4 years, it's become kind of such an important tool for politics. Like every politician's on Twitter. Every politician kind of weaponizes Twitter to attack other people, kind of boost themselves. But in terms of I guess the free speech issue, I think it's a huge question. Like, do you restrict content that might not be completely truthful, but it's still kind of a First Amendment thing because it's freedom of the press, or do you restrict it? And yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you, kind of flagging it. Although, people might say, oh, it's a free speech issue. I think Twitter kind of broadcasting the truth is more important.